Okay, let's begin. So thank you, everyone. So good morning and good afternoon from our audience around the world. Thank you for joining us today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Cynthia Mark, the Global Product Marketing Lead for Alemira, based in Singapore, and I will be the moderator for our webinar today. And for those that are not familiar with Alemira, Alemira provides a digital ecosystem for education and research. Our topic today is how to boost your students' maths and spelling skills in an inclusive learning environment. We are thankful to have Jasmine with us today. But before we begin, I have a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session will be recorded, so that's available for viewing post-webinar. And if you have any questions for us, please let me know. Just type in your question in the chat or unmute yourself. All right, so let's begin. Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, for the introduction. So let's start today's webinar. We have scheduled around 30 to maximum 45 minutes, and I'm very happy you're joined, and let's get into it. So a little bit about myself. I'm also a primary school teacher. I finished my studies 2013 at the Teacher University of Zurich. I then worked as a primary school teacher for 6 years and did an additional 2 years as a special needs teacher in 5th and 6th grade. So that's students who are around 11 or 12-year-old. I'm with Alemira School since November 2019, and I'm responsible for the school advisory. I'm also currently doing a training as a leader for an educational institution. So much about me. Now let's see what we're covering in today's webinar. We will start with insights from 25 years of inclusive education in Switzerland. We will then talk about challenges and opportunities that come with it. And then we had a case study using Calcularis and Orthograph to improve learning outcomes while promoting an inclusive learning environment. I will present you the background and the motivation of those programs, as well as I show you how they work. We then talk about the implementation in inclusive classrooms. And at the end, we have a Q&A. So as Cynthia mentioned, please use the chat function during the webinar where you can write your questions down. So let's start with the first point, insights from 25 years of inclusive education in Switzerland. I want to start with actually defining inclusion. What does it mean? So according to Andreas Hinz, in the field of education, inclusion means unrestricted access and unconditional affiliation with general kindergartens and schools in the social environment. And that means those schools and kindergartens, they are faced with the task of meeting the individual needs of all. So that's what inclusion means in education. And I also want to explain what is the difference between integration and inclusion. And I think this graphic here on the right helps very much to understand it. So integration means that something that was separate before is integrated again into the group, but remains kind of a separate entity within the group. Whereas inclusion looks very different. So in inclusion, it means that it's really just one group, everyone is mixed together, and kind of the structure, the circumstances adapt to the needs of the group. So that's the differentiation between integration and inclusion. And I think before we start talking about inclusion, this differentiation has to be clear to everyone. So now let's see. What is the legal basis in Switzerland? So the Disability Equality Act has been in force since 1st of January 2004. But there are many schools in Switzerland that already pursued an inclusive schooling before 2004. So where are we standing today? We have a total of 940,000 students in compulsory school. And you can see in this graphic how many students are actually in the regular classes. And that's a very high number. It's 96.7% of all our students are in normal regular classes in public schools. And only a small number, 1.5%, they go to so-called special classes, which are also in normal schools. What they are and why we have them, I will explain later. And then there is 1.8% of students who go to separate special educational needs institutions. So let's see, I'll admit, how does it work? How does this inclusion work in Switzerland? I want to mention here that we have 26 cantons and everyone has their own special needs concept. That means there are a lot of regional differences. So everything I'm talking about today is kind of an average numbers from those 26 cantons. So in regular class that we saw before, like the majority of students in inclusion, we have from those 96.7%, we have around 4.5% of pupils who receive enhanced special educational measures. How they look like, I'll explain later. We also have 4.3% of curriculum adaptation. So they go to regular class, but they follow a different curriculum or an adapted curriculum. How does this look like in practice? So those students who are in regular class, included in regular class, teachers, the main teachers, they receive support from qualified special needs teachers and sometimes also assistants. So depending on the number of students with special educational needs in their class, they receive a certain amount of lessons where they also have a special educational needs teacher in the classroom and assistants. What do special educational needs teachers do? They adapt the material. So they take the same material that the rest of the class has and they adapt it to a bit a lower level, but also sometimes to a higher level. And sometimes it's not only the material, but they kind of adapt the whole curriculum for an individual student. Then what else do we have? We have a different range on one-on-one therapies like speech therapy or psychomotor therapy. And when in public schools, teachers see that one student might benefit a lot from a one-on-one speech therapy. Sometimes then during the lessons, this student can go to a speech therapist, or sometimes the therapists also come into the classroom and work with the whole group. Then for non-native speakers, there is an additional language learning support. So speakers who have German as a second language or a foreign language, there are specially trained teachers who help those students to catch up with the language. They also come into the classroom or adapt the material for those students. Then support for gifted students varies a lot from school to school, but there are often extra lessons or extracurricular activities, or as well during class, it's actually also the responsibility of the main teacher that she offers support for gifted students so that she adapts her material for extra difficult exercises. So that's basically how inclusion works in Switzerland. It's really a work together from the teacher and the special educational needs teachers. And here from practice, from my experience, I can share that it's very, very important that the responsibilities are clearly defined, who's doing what and who's responsible for what. So that's inclusion in Switzerland. And now we move to kind of the integration, so special needs class. I showed you in one of my previous slides that we have 1.5% of students who visit those special needs classes. And those classes are within the normal public schools, but they're kind of separate. There is an introductory class with max 14 students. And what is an introductory class? It means when a kindergarten child is not fully ready for the transition to school, so they can go to those introductory class and receive additional support. So as soon as possible, they can go to the regular class. We also have a foreign speaker class. And those are for children who move to Switzerland and do not speak German. So this is a small group and a teacher that is extra educated for that. And they help the students to pick up as quickly as possible the language skills that they need. And as soon as they have that, they are included into regular class. And then the third one is so-called small classes with around 8 to 12 students, and they are in a regular school for students where it really doesn't work in the regular class, where they need extra support, and then they can visit those small classes, and small classes are usually the whole compulsory school, so from first grade until third secondary. So this is kind of the integrative system that we pursue in Switzerland. And then, of course, we still have the separation, which is this number, like 1.8% of students are going to separate special needs schools. And there are many different schools according to the needs. In example, there's a speech therapy school. The goal in Switzerland is always when a child has to go to a special needs school because there it receives the support it needs, that the goal is always to be re-included in a normal school. So that could mean that a student visits a special needs school for about 1 year, 2 years, and then is again included in normal regular classes. So that's the system in Switzerland with the inclusion, integration, and also the separation. So now I want to talk about challenges and opportunities for inclusive system. I will first go for opportunities for students and then for society, and then we look at the challenges. So the main points are promotion of social skills. So students really learn tolerance, helpfulness, and cooperation. They understand that being different is completely normal. And it also promotes social responsibility. This is strengthened because stronger students can then help weaker students. And from my practice, I also saw that this helps the students kind of a sense of maturity. So they are there and they have to take responsibility for others. Then special needs students, they perform better. Studies show that students in integrative or inclusive learning arrangements show a clear performance advantage over special needs students in separative forms of instruction. So they actually benefit tremendously from going to regular classes. And then there's a no slowdown for non-disabled and highly gifted students. Even gifted students are, according to studies, not slowed down in their cognitive development and learning growth. Now, let's look at opportunities for society. So my first point is the same as for children, obviously, like this promotes skills like helpfulness, tolerance, and cooperation in society. But it also supports equal opportunities, and therefore social differences in society can be reduced. And maybe surprisingly, inclusive systems actually reduce costs. So the costs and care for young people with disability is significantly higher than for a good education of these people. So if you imagine that when people with disabilities from a very early age, they're always in separate institutions and they're really held away from as well the labor market, that in itself actually costs much more money than including them in our regular system. And then this also leads to better opportunities on the labor market. Now we talked about opportunities, we also have to look at challenges. What are challenges for students? So usually, according to studies, they have a lower social position inside the class, and thus this causes psychological stress. That leads to the second point. They often have a less pronounced sense of self-esteem, and that also results from constantly being reminded of their own limitations. So they can always compare what am I capable of and what are my peers capable of. The third point is insufficient support. So teachers are not sufficiently qualified to be experts in all those special needs. And even if they want to do the best and try to do the best, it's very, very difficult that they are experts in all those different range of disabilities. So that could result that the children actually do not receive the support they need. And now let's look at challenges for society. It's often perceived as an excessive demand by school stakeholders, so they really feel over-challenged with including everyone into the regular class. And this also then results in dissatisfaction. Teachers feel left alone. They feel like, okay, now it has been decided to pursue an inclusive system, but the work itself we have to do alone, and we don't feel that we have the necessary skills for that. And they also complain about not having enough resources, which means they say we do not have enough special needs educators, we do not have enough assistants, and we do not have enough training. So that's on the side of the school stakeholders. And there's still the fear. So parents of children without disabilities are concerned that the educational attainment will drop off. Although where I previously showed in studies, it has been shown that, sorry, what was that? No slowdown for non-disabled and highly gifted students has actually been showed in studies. And why is that? What is an explanation for that? It's in inclusive classrooms. The material is adapted in a way that it should benefit many different levels. And so also non-disabled and highly gifted students, they benefit a lot from that. But we have to see that fear is still there. So now we discussed challenges and opportunities, and I want to come to a conclusion. The exclusion of people with disability actually violates the basic law in Switzerland, since the dignity of these people is not respected. And that kind of concludes in schools have no choice. If this is in our basic law, schools have to follow an inclusive system. And now what can we do? We must address the challenges. So, for example, dissatisfaction, over-challenge from a teacher's perspective, and less pronounced self-esteem and insufficient support from a student's perspective, those challenges, they can be reduced through the use of intelligent learning materials. And what are intelligent learning materials? I want to show you with the next slide what Alemira School basically has to offer as intelligent learning material. So I want to start with our vision, with the vision from Christian Fegeli, the General Manager of K-12 at Alemira. And we strive to enable each and every child to obtain the basic skills, writing, reading, and math, so that they gain access to regular education. So the focus on those learning programs is really on the basic skills. Now, I want to talk a bit about the background and the motivation. So Alemira school history starts in 2005, and it was from Markus Gross. He's a professor at one of the world-renowned universities, and he has a son, Adrian, who struggled with learning to read and write. And you can imagine he tried everything to help his son, but only very few things really helped. So he thought, I need to do something for those children who struggle so much with acquiring those basic skills. So he developed with his then master student, Christian Fegeli, he developed a prototype of our now program, Orthograph, which you can see here on the left. And we also have the program for mathematics. It's called Calcularis, and it has been developed in 2010 with the help of Michael von Aster. And Michael von Aster is an educator, but also a neuroscientist and a medical doctor. And he basically, all his life, he tried to understand how does the brain learn math and why do some students struggle so much with it, and what do we need to show them? How can we help them to excel in math? So that's those two programs that I want to present you today. And basically the goal is this, is equal opportunities. Students in school, they are often facing this situation. So they do not really have a solid base, but the school curriculum and the teacher already demands from them to do much more difficult exercises, and they're absolutely not ready, and this causes a lot of stress for them. So those programs that we offer, it's kind of following the mastery learning theory, which means you can only progress if your basis is really, really solid. So you go one step after the other, and it's made sure you're capable of performing well on your level. So how is this done in Orthograph and Calcularis? So for Orthograph, it's basically a spelling program. I will show you in the next slide what is the exact content, but it works with a multi-sensory approach. So it comes in colors, shapes, and structure and tones, because that facilitates the learning on a neurobiological level. And the students, basically what they do is they listen to the words, and then they see the multisensory cues, and then they type the word and they get automatically corrected. And that really automizes the spoken word to the written word, this basic skill. I want to show you here what it does in the background. So it's training the 8,000 of the most frequently used words in English. And how is it built? In the background, there's kind of this learning plan, and it's modular built. So one module after the other with increasing difficulty. And where here is the inclusion. So this learning plan, you can adapt for each and every child. You can make it his own for his level. And then the computer itself is an intelligent learning material, because it continuously analyzes where does the student make mistakes and what does he need next. So I want to emphasize this with this example. It's a German word, and then the computer analyzes, is the D mistaken with T? How often does this happen? And the B mistaken with P, how often does this happen? And then the computer realizes, okay, here the student seems to struggle a lot. That means he needs more words with D to train this differentiation between D and T. So really, the whole class works with the same tool, but it's different for each and every child. It progresses according to their speed, and it gives them what they need. And this, to train the written language, the spoken to the written language, to automate that, is a tremendous relief for teachers, that they can just use one tool, and the tool in itself is inclusive. So it offers all those different levels and this adaptation. So that's our spelling program. And there has been a lot of studies has been done. I mentioned in the first slide that it was developed in one of the world's most renowned universities of Switzerland, ETH Zurich, and therefore they also had to prove that this tool is working. And they did only after 3 months of training. And what does training mean here? Training means 3 times 20 minutes. So 1 hour per week, the students could improve their spelling significantly. And it's staggering also words that they not specifically learned, they could improve significantly. Now let's head over to our math program, Calcularis. What is Calcularis? It basically covers the basic skill of math, which are in the number room of 1000. And all teachers of you, they know that if you don't master the number room 1000, if you cannot orientate yourself in this number room, you cannot progress to more difficult math, or you struggle a lot to go in the number room 1,000,000. Which is coming in Switzerland just after this number room. So this solid basis, the basic skill of math, and understanding those numbers and the relation between them is critical. And Calcularis is focusing on that. It also offers a multi-sensory approach, and kind of the core of it is really strengthening a mental number line, which is very, very important. So how is Calcularis an intelligent program? Calcularis, as Orthograph, has kind of a skill net in the background. So all the exercises are in the background, and they're built very hierarchically with a very logical follow. And there is a most direct path. So if a student does the exercises well enough and quick enough, he can kind of go through a direct path, and also sometimes even jump ahead. But if the computer sees that, oh no, a student is struggling with those exercises, then he kind of adds a support game to train the skill on another level to redirect him back to the previous exercise. And here we see a student that needs a lot of additional support, and then Calcularis sees that and puts in a lot of different support games to help the student to progress on its own level. And here again, where is the inclusive aspect? It's one tool, everyone is using the same tool, but it looks, for every child, it looks different. So you can go direct, or you have a lot of support. And here, with using tools like this, one of the challenges I addressed is kind of the lower self-esteem of those students. the comparison is much reduced because they don't see other students doing something different. They all work on the same program, but just in a different way, and they cannot really compare that very well. So here is where this benefit comes from, as well as to the challenges of the teachers, that they are overwhelmed with this task, that they're over-challenged. These programs offer them in itself an inclusive instrument. So if they use that with their students, they can be certain that their math lessons are already inclusive, because that's the nature of how it's built. Also for Calcularis, there have been various studies done, and they evaluated the progress of the students after 6 weeks and after 12 weeks, and they could show a significant improvement in those basic skills. So now, where I explained you what is Orthograph, what is Calcularis, and now I want to jump to the implementation in inclusive classrooms. So we really push for the usage in regular class. Use this with all the students in lower primary. We're talking here about the basic needs in reading, writing, and math, and that means it's used in lower primary in regular class. And as I mentioned before, this is really kind of the integration, the inclusion for everyone, and can also be used as a prevention, so that those learning difficulties, they are prevented, they don't even arise, or at least they're kind of helped with that. And then support special education needs. They need to analyze in the coach. So the programs do not only have the material for the students, but there's also a coach function, and the teacher can use this analysis to understand where exactly in those basic skills is my student struggling the most. And then this information is very valuable information to use in short sequences with the students and deepening and working out strategies. So these programs are very helpful to kind of connect the both. When I said in my slide, it's very important to say who's responsible for what, the regular class teacher and the special education needs teachers. And this is kind of an instrument that they can use both. The training is done in regular class, but the analysis and then understanding what does the student need and how can I work out with him some strategies, then that's the special education needs teacher. Then as third stakeholders for the implementation are also parents. So the programs, after introducing them with the children, they're very easy to use, and children can use it on their own. So they can also use it at home. And parents, sometimes in Switzerland, they ask teachers, don't you have additional material? How can we support our child at home? So these tools are excellent to also give to the parents to use at home and do the extra training at home. So now I want to go a little bit deeper into what's happening in the regular class and what's happening in the special needs teacher class. So the regular class teachers, they are responsible to actually use the programs in their lessons, or also give homework, and they use the coach to check times and current progress. Like, did they do their homework? Did they do their training? Who's progressing well? So all good. And students without learning difficulties or without special needs, they train once or twice at school on their own. And then the special needs teacher, they support students with special needs and analyze the problems in the coach, that's what I said before, and reflect the training with the students and offer also extra material outside the program. So students with special educational needs, their training is more intense. So twice at schools, and on their own, and once or twice also at home. All right, so that's my presentation. I look on my watch. So we now have around 5 more minutes to also tackle some questions from your side. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And maybe Cynthia, you could tell me if there were any questions in the chat so far.
No questions yet so far, but thank you for sharing. I just wanted to open the floor to see if anyone have any questions. If not, I have one. Maybe I will start. So I wanted to ask, because inclusive education is something that came about more recently than ever. But I think Switzerland as a market is a lot more advanced. Started using this as sort of something the school use on a day-to-day, right? Yeah. I know that, in your background, you have experience in, teaching in Hong Kong and other countries. Yes. How would you say the different level of inclusiveness you see in those markets?
Oh, it's actually staggering. So I would say Switzerland is quite far ahead. So my experience in Hong Kong as well as Mexico was very different. So their inclusion or even like integration was not yet something many teachers were even aware of, or at least not something that was demanded to do in the school. So even though I worked for a Swiss school in Mexico, it was a very separative environment.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
We have a question from Lena here. What math skills does Calcularis target at?
So Calcularis really targets the basic skills in math. So it's, as I said, it's very hierarchically built. So they start with just differentiating bigger and smaller. So just all the skills they need to do to actually be able to do calculations are checked. So it's really one step after the other. And then it incorporates like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Like everything here is covered. Like basically everything they need to know within these is covered. What is not covered is kind of geometry or reading the clock. This is not covered, but the rest is covered.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Lina? You can unmute if you like to speak to actually.
Yes, it does. Can we know the cost of these programs, both of them?
So the cost of these programs,
I think
sorry,
I was just going to say, Lina, maybe later our salesperson can reach out to you and let you know, because it does based on the class size and what you're looking at and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I was about
sure.
to.
Okay, thank you.
So can you were saying, sorry, anyone have any other questions? No, I will have another one.
I have one.
Go ahead.
The one for spelling and reading, the orthograph, does it only cover words? Like, so it targets as if one area, spelling, high frequency words. Does it target other areas?
No, it really targets this, like to automate the spoken language to the written language. So, and then it always asks a word and students have to type the word. And this is what it covers.
Okay. It's just very narrow because dyslexic students have a lot of needs and it kind of targets one thing. I wanted to check. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The thing that is special about orthograph, it's really coming from the neuropsychological background, and it offers this learning in a multisensory way. So the words are depicted in colors, shape, sounds, so melodies, and structure, and as well movement, and all of this should automate and help the students to automate the written word.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina.
Based on your experience, Jasmine, because I think one of the challenges that you pointed out is in building an inclusive class, it's sometimes challenging for a teacher because, you know, there's so many things to juggle. And then, of course, there are kids with different needs. And if your materials are all the same and they're not adaptive, it'll be tricky. So, I mean, with your experience as a teacher, and of course, your experience now with Alemira using Calcularis and Orthograph, would these two tools be a good first step to be embedded? I mean, not as a main curriculum, maybe just as a side curriculum to help the teacher to start building an inclusive environment, because sometimes it is tricky to actually turn 360 or turn 180 and change everything, right? So in your experience, do you think this is a good first step to building an inclusive classroom by bringing a product like this into the class?
Yeah, absolutely. Like what it helped me is I was faced a situation. I was a special education needs teacher and in 5th and 6th grade. And in math, they really lacked the basis. And my duty as a special education needs teacher was I need to give them the material that they were using in regular class. I just had to adapt it to make it more easy and to kind of rebuild the basis and still progress with what they do in 5th and 6th grade was over challenging for me. Like I couldn't cut myself and do two different things. So the Calcularis was really so helpful for me to say, look, here you work on the basis. You do this with this program. I check it. I talk to you about the most difficult exercises, but this was kind of covered. And that gave me a very good feeling. And I could also see how they improved and kind of step by step brought more of these basic skills. And then I could progress with the material of 5th and 6th grade. So it's definitely just a tremendous help, because adapting all the material on different needs and level and giving different homework, it's just a lot. So yeah, I can just say that even I felt over challenged with this, and many teachers do. And we just need those tools. We need tools that take a part of this load.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jasmine.
Thank you very much.
I think we are running out of time. If there's no last questions, I'd like to thank everyone that joined us today. We'll definitely share the recording. If there are certain things that Jasmine shared that you'd like to sort of review a bit, you will receive it in an email later.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Here, and have a great day.